The heroic spy in the sky got new Eterniaized. Is that even a word? Anyways, we have a new Eternia Buzz-Off review for your viewing pleasure right now on Toy Habits Reviews. And before we dive into the review, smash that like button, turn on notifications, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss a beat. Hey everyone, welcome back to Toy Habits, and we are taking a detailed look at the Masters of the Universe Masterverse new Eternia Buzz-Off figure and comparing him to his MOTU Classics counterpart. So let's kick things off by taking a look at the packaging and artwork. And here is Buzz-Off, and he is in the Masters of the Universe New Eternia Masterverse style window display box, and you can see on the side of the box that he is just in a standard pose with the honeycomb background, and he is sans helmet, and you can see a nice illustration of his harness. And if you move to the back of the box, you can see a really nice scene where he is amongst all of the Adrenids that are maybe going into battle. So you see him proudly flying through the air, and he does have his helmet on this time. All right, well, now that we've seen Buzz-Off's box, let's take a look at the figure itself and crack him open. And now that Buzz-Off is out of the box, we can take a detailed look at the figure itself, and we will start by looking at the head sculpt. And Buzz-Off's head sculpt is really amazing. It's a nice blend of the MOTU 2000X and MOTU Classics versions. You can see a really nice grin on his face that's painted in brown, and he has a really nice yellow face that is outlining his bluish green tints to his eyes. And you can also see some of the slits that they've carved in his eyes there. If you work around the right side of his head, you can see some chevron detail and also some texturing that is also present on his shoulder. So really love that tie-in. On the top of his head, you can see that his antennas are fully laid down and kind of greased back, which gives him a really interesting and streamlined look. You can also see some of the detail and texturing on the head, and that really comes down to a point where his nose meets his face. And I think they did a fantastic job on the head sculpt here. We'll just turn it around so you can get a full view of what his head looks like. And continuing down, we can see, if you look underneath his neck, you can also see a lot of the sculpting detail that they've provided here, and it's really leans into that bee-like being that Buzz-Off is. And you can also see some of the texturing on the shoulders here, really continuing into his body armor. And speaking of which, he does come with a gold harness with a green jewel that is smack dab in the middle of the harness. And I think this is a great look for Buzz-Off because there's really not much you can do with this figure aside from adding armor to it to differentiate it from all the other Buzz-Offs that we have in the line. And they did a really nice job with some of the texturing too on his armor. You can also see some of the texturing on the brown parts, and it's kind of alternating with, you know, yellow kind of flat look to this brown texturing throughout, which gives them a really nice look. All right, and zooming out, let's take a look at the wing design for Buzz-Off. And the wings are attached on ball joints, which is really nice, and it kind of gives you the freedom to do his wings however you like it. This is kind of like Burger King. Have it your way, baby. You can fold his smaller wings up and down. You can tuck them in. You can also move his larger wings. And what this does is there's a joint here that has certain positions that you can put the wings in. So you can't actually put them wherever you want them, but they kind of lock in place in certain positions. So you can style them any way you want, which is really nice. You can give him more of a streamlined look down, or you can give him more of a flying look when you spread them out like this. And you can maneuver the smaller wings in any position that you like here. So gives you a lot of versatility to the way that you want to display Buzz-Off, and you can put him in lots of flying poses if you like, and if you have a flying stand, that'll add a very cool level of detail to your shelf. And looking at the wings themselves, they do have some detail here. It looks like there's some like techno detail in here, and also just some finer details that remind you that yes, this is actually an insect being. So I thought they did a really nice job on the wings without overdoing them. And while we were looking back, we can check out the harness back here and how it ties in to the figure itself. And there are 2 attachments for the harness, and if you want to take it off, which we'll show you in a sec, we can check him out without his harness. All right, and here we have Buzz-Off without his harness, and while it's off, let's take a closer look at that. And you can see that it's actually translucent, so you can kind of see my finger behind the straps here, which gives it a really nice effect. The jewel is also a piece which lets the light in, so it's actually it's a very interesting piece, and I actually love that they made it translucent. You can kind of see some of the strap detail here, and it's a very simple piece, but it really adds a lot to the figure. And while we have his harness off, you can actually take a look at the chest armor itself, and you can see the alternating really dark chocolate brown paint app that they gave him alternating to yellow, and you can also see some of the finer lines that they've sculpted on the chest here, which looks really, really nice. It kind of draws your eyes in and kind of makes it so he has the illusion of having abs, which are usually framed out on these figures, but he is wearing chest armor, so you can't really see how ripped he is. And moving to the arms, you can see the insect texturing detail here, and you can see some of the coloring that they've added to the arm here. It's more of like a reddish brown that is speckled. So it's actually really neat because you can kind of see how the chocolate brown claws kind of blend in to the wrist cuffs and also into the arms, which have a very layered effect on the forearm. Really digging that. One of the cool things about Buzz-Off's hands is they are articulated, so you can actually move his pinchers up and down, which is a really cool effect. And it actually makes it a lot easier for him to hold his axe. And the arms are symmetrical, so you get the same effect on each arm. And they also have the articulation of the pinchers and claws present on the left arm as well. So it's a really nice feature that they've added, and you can also see the texturing on the claws themselves. And last thing to point out is they actually put wrist cuffs on this figure, and so these are sculpted on, and so they are not removable. So, but it's actually interesting because we've never seen a Buzz-Off that has sculpted on wrist cuffs before. So really added a lot of detail to the upper body of Buzz-Off, and let's take a look now at the lower body. All right, and Buzz-Off's lower body has a combination of a furry loincloth with battle armor, which is a really interesting combination. He has a really nice gold belt that ties in with his harness that has a triangular design that is moving all around it. And from the back, you can see his furry loincloth, and on the sides, you can see the battle armor, which is really reminiscent of the battle armor He-Man from the new Eternia line. And this is really a play on that. So really love the addition of the armor, and it just gives him a really unique look. You can also see some of the insect detail on the legs here with these portions that are jutting out, and you can also see some of that brownish red speckling at the bottom here. So it's really interesting the way that they chose to paint that, and it is feeding into his boot or shoe or claw feet, whatever you want to call them. And just a really interesting look, and it really lends itself to the insect design for this figure. And Buzz-Off comes with 2 accessories, and let's first take a look at his axe. And he comes with a dark gray axe, which looks really neat. It actually looks like metal the way they've designed it. It's dented and pitted, and there is some shinier paint app on the edges here, which you can see reflecting the light. It has a really oversized handle, and I actually like the way that they've placed the handle on the side so you can actually have his axe facing forward. It's a really, really nice piece. And he also comes with a very cool helmet, and this helmet is also translucent, and it is actually a really neat design. You can kind of see the color of my finger behind the plastic here, so you can see his antenna that are laying a little bit higher on the helmet than on his head, and you can also see his honeycomb eyes that have that greenish blue cast to them, which is really interesting because when you put on the helmet, it actually gives the appearance that his eyes are peeking through. And so I think the helmet is very well designed, and we can throw the helmet on here and check him out in his new Eternia look. And I think this look is really amazing, and you can see all the detail that they've poured into this. So it does look like his eyes are showing through, and his helmet fits really snugly on the top of his head, and you can see his brown head sculpt coming through the translucent plastic here. So let's take a look all the way around, and you can see some of the finer lines that they've sculpted in for the helmet design, which gives him a really interesting look. I think I'm definitely going to display him this way. And let's take a look at Buzz Off all geared up, and we can show you how his articulated claw can grasp onto this axe here. So the axe handle actually has a lot of clearance in there, so it actually fits around the larger part of his claw, and then you can just pinch them down, and voila, he is holding on to his axe. And from what I said earlier, the handle really allows the axe to have more of a front-facing position, which is really cool for display purposes. All right, it's comparison time, and let's take a look at Buzz Off compared to his MOTU Classics figure, and let's zoom in on the head sculpts here, and you can see that they've really done a great job differentiating the MOTU Classics helmet versus the new Eternia helmet. Now, the Classics helmet is really reminiscent of the vintage figure, the way that it's shaped and the way that it sits on his head. And the new Eternia version is a much different design for the helmet. You can see that there are some cutouts here and kind of has some really insect-looking sculpting to it. And you can see the way that they've done the antennas are really different too on the tops of the helmets here. So let's take both of these helmets off and take a look at just their head sculpts now without the helmets. And you can really see that they've really tried to, again, just differentiate and just make a really new Buzz Off head sculpt design. And the new Eternia version is actually really a lot more angular than the Classics version. So there are some subtle differences here, just different paint app tones in the eyes. And you can also see the differences in the facial expressions on the figures. All right, and zooming out to the arms, you can also see that there are similarities in the way that the arms were textured and constructed. So both of these figures have texturing and some paint app detail on the shoulders, which is much more pronounced on the Buzz Off figure from the MOTU Classics line. You do also see some texturing that is very similar across both figures, and I think I like the way that they've done the design for Buzz Off's chest in the new Eternia version. And just because the MOTU Classics versions are typically a lot wider, the new Eternia version just gives Buzz Off a lot slimmer and more form-fitting look to his armor. All right, and let's zoom out and take a look at their wing designs because they are very different from each other. So with the MOTU Classics Buzz Off, you can see that they've added just 2 wing ports here, and kind of a similar way that the wings function. You can bring the wings out and you can also rotate them. And for this version, I actually like the Classics version, the way that they handled the wings, because they don't lock in place. So you can pretty much put them wherever you want. There's also reuse of some web store parts down here, which gives him a more insect look, but I do like the added wings that they've added to the new Eternia Buzz-Off, because I wasn't a big super fan of the extra legs that they put on the back of the MOTU Classics Buzz-Off. And some more similarities in the wing design. The details in the wings on the Classics version pop out a little more just because the plastic is a lot lighter than the darker yellow plastic on the new Eternia version. And finally, turning both of these figures back around, we can get a look at the axes that come with each of the figures. And the new Eternia version is a much more massive axe than the Classics version, and it is painted one solid color versus the Classics version, which is painted in two colors. And you can see the placement of the axe handle is more in the front versus on the side with the new Eternia version. And just some details here. You can see that the articulation is present in the new Eternia version, but it is not present in the MOTU Classics version. They just didn't build him that way. The leg designs are very similar to the figures, and the parts that are jutting out from the legs are much more pronounced on the new Eternia version. And the boot design and the foot design looks very similar to each other, but very pleased with the design of the new Eternia version. It really pays homage to the MOTU Classics version and the 2000X version while giving him its own style. And that wraps up the review of the Masters of the Universe New Eternia Buzz-Off figure, and be sure to check out the amazing still image review done by the one and only Toy Sorceress, who has an uncanny ability to bring these figures to life through the lens of her camera. Let us know what you think about this figure in the comments below, and thanks for tuning into Toy Habits.